Hello, this thing on. Okay, yeah. View, here goes nothing. Hi, let me just do the intro that I just did. Today, I woke up pretty early. Had a nice breakfast, a croissant sandwich with egg and sausage. Put inside the croissant. I cut the croissant in half and I put some stuff in it and I ate it. It was pretty good. And the egg was cheesy and seasoned well. Woke up early. I did my natural sunlight thing where I get out of bed and brush my teeth and wash my face in complete darkness. And then the only light I get is when I walk outside. And now we're gonna read the Cane Yellow. So, where were we before? Well, I did record this part and then I ended the thing, but they're basically in a church or something. The choir boys, blah, blah, blah. Found the organ playing highly interesting. Learned and scientific, it was too much. But it expressed a vivid, if cold, intelligence. Maybe I might as well just read it. Moreover, it possessed the French quality of taste. Or I don't know. I have too much of a monotonous voice, but I'm really not trying to do voice acting. Taste reigned supreme, self-controlled, dignified, and reticent. Today, however, from the first chord, I had felt a change for the worst. A sinister change. During Vespers, it had been chiefly the chancel organ which supported the beautiful choir, but now and again quite wantonly, as it seemed from the west gallery where the great organ stands, a heavy hand has struck across the church. At the serene peace of those clear voices, it was something more and harsh and dissonant, and it betrayed no lack of skill. As it recurred again and again, it set me thinking of what my architect's books say about the custom in early times to consecrate the choir as soon as it was built, and that the nave, I don't know what that word is, being finished sometime half a century later, often did not get any blessing at all. Oh man, I don't want to Google all these dumb words. Ugh. Just the central part where all the pews are. Half a century later, often did not get any blessing at all. I wondered idly if that had been the case at Saint Barnabé, and whether something not usually supposed to have a home, to be at home in a Christian church, might have entered undetected and taken possession of the West Gallery. I had read of such things happening too, but not in works on architecture. Then I remember that Saint Barnabé was not much more than 100 years old and smiled at the incongruous association of medieval superstitions with that cheerful little piece of 18th century Rococo. I've heard that word a lot, but I don't know what Rococo is. Rococo style. It's a light-hearted, opulent style of the medieval times. Okay. And what is the Vespers? The transition from day to night, also known as the evening prayer. Okay, the more you know. And there should have followed a few quiet chords fit to accompany mediation while we waited for the sermon. Instead of that, the discord, they had discord in the medieval times. At the lower end of the church broke out with the departure of the clergy, as if now nothing could control it. I belong to those children of an older and simpler generation, those who do not love to seek for psychological subtleties in art, and I have ever refused to find in music anything more than melody and harmony, but I felt that in the labyrinth of sounds now issuing from the instrument there was something being hunted. Up and down the pedals chased him while the manuals blared approval. Poor devil. Whoever he was, there seemed small chance of escape. Small hope of escape. My nervous annoyance changed to anger. Who was doing this? How dare he play like this in the midst of divine service? I glanced at the people near me. Not one appeared to be in the least disturbed. The placid brows of the kneeling nuns still turned toward the altar, lost none of their devout abstraction under the pale shadow of their white headdress. The fashionable lady beside me was looking expectantly at Monsignor C. For all her face betrayed, the organ might have been singing an Ave Maria. You know, like that song? That song that played in Batman. Actually, did it play? The Joker just sang it? Or the Riddler, I mean. Or was it the Joker? No, it was the Riddler, actually. But now, at last, the preacher had made the sign of the cross and commanded silence. I turned to him gladly. Thus far, I had not found the rest I had counted on when I entered St. Barnabé that afternoon. I'm so itchy. I was worn out by 3 nights of physical suffering and mental trouble. The last had been the worst, and it was an exhausted body and a mind benumbed and yet acutely sensitive, which I had brought to my favorite church for healing, for I had been reading The King in Yellow. Excuse me. Oops, I was supposed to mute my microphone. Oops, okay. Honestly, how do so many people have the book? Is this like, it's like getting passed on from time to time, like different timelines? Like someone just finds the book, or they're like fated to find the book and go mad. Anyway, the sun ariseth. They gather themselves together and lay them down in their dens. Monsignor C. delivered his text in a calm voice, glancing quietly over the congregation. My eyes turned, I knew not why, towards the lower end of the church. The organist was coming from behind his pipes, passing along a gallery on his way out. I saw him disappear by a small door that leads to some stairs which descended directly to the street. He was a slender man. Say that again. Slender man. You know that one bit where Peter like gets really tall? It's like he's like Slender Man. He's like, oh what? It's just a goof. Actually, I can low-key pull it up right now. Hold on. Peter, Slender.
You sure you're not too tall for this?
Nah, it's gonna be great.
Kill each other.
Yay!
Ow! Who kicked me?
Sorry.
What the hell?
My bad.
Ow, who's doing that?
It's that jerk up there.
It's Slender Man!
Kill yourself.
What? It's just a goof. I will never forgive Peter for this. Okay, that's enough. Go back. Go back to TikTok. I mean, turn it off. Alright. Where was I? His face was as white as his coat was black. Good riddance, I thought, with your wicked music. I hope your assistants will play the closing voluntary with a feeling of relief. With a deep, calm feeling of relief, I turned back to the mild face in the pulpit. I need to look up what that word is, too. Learning a lot of words today. It's a raised platform where the people say the prayers, or where the clergy says their preach. And settled myself to listen. Here at last was the ease of mind I longed for. "My children," said the preacher, "one truth the human soul finds hardest of all to learn, that it has nothing to fear, it can never be made to see that nothing can really harm it." Curious doctrine, I thought, for a Catholic priest. Let's see how he will reconcile that with the fathers. "Nothing can really harm the soul," he went on, in his coolest, clearest tones, "because—" But I never heard the reason. My eye left his face. I knew not for what reason, and sought to the lower end of the church. The same man was coming out from behind the organ, and was passing along the gallery the same way, but there had not been time for him to return, and if he had just returned, or if he had returned, I must have seen him. I felt a faint chill, and my heart sank. And yet his going and coming were no affair of mine. I looked at him. I could not look away from his black figure and his white face. When he sat opposite to me, he turned and sent across the church, straight into my eyes, a look of hate, intense and deadly. I have never seen any other like it. Would to God I might never see it again. Then he disappeared by the same door through which I had watched him depart less than 60 seconds before. I sat and tried to collect my thoughts. My first sensation was like that of a very young child badly hurt, when it catches its breath before crying out. To suddenly find myself the object of such hatred was exquisitely painful, and this man was an utter stranger. Why should he hate me so? Me, whom he had never seen before. For the moment, all other sensations were merged in this one pang. Even fear was subordinate to grief. For the moment, I never doubted, but in the next I began to reason, and a sense of the incongruous came to aid. As I have said, St. Barnabé is a modern church. It is small and well lighted. One sees all over it, almost at a glance. The organ gallery gets a strong white light from a row of long windows in the claret story, which have not even colored glass, the pulpit being in the middle of the church, which is like the upper area. It followed that when I turned towards it, whatever moved at the west end could not fail to attract my eye. When the organist passed, it was no wonder that I saw him. I had simply miscalculated the interval between his first and second passing. He had come in that last time by the other side door. As for the look which had so upset me, there had been no such thing, and I was a nervous fool. I looked about. This was likely place to harbor supernatural horrors. A clear-cut, reasonable face of Monsignor C, his collected manner and easy, graceful gestures. Were they not just a little discouraging to the notion of a gruesome mystery? I glanced above his head and almost laughed. A flyaway lady supporting one color of the pulpit canopy. One corner, not color, which looked like a fringed damask tablecloth. In a high wind, at the first attempt of a basilisk to pose up there in the organ loft, she would point her gold trumpet at him and puff him out of existence. I laughed to myself over this conceit, which at the time I thought very amusing, and sat and chaffed myself and everything else, from the old harpy outside the railing who had made me pay 10 centimes for my chair before she would let me in. She was more like a basilisk, I told myself. Dark Souls reference. Don't let them blow on you or you'll die instantly. I told myself that was my organist with the anemic complexion. Actually, I want to know what a centime is. It sounds like a septim, from Skyrim. Is it a real currency? 1/100th of a basic currency unit, so it's like 10 cents. But when did they use it? In Switzerland. Belgium or France before they adopted the euro. Okay. Then was my organist with the anemic complexion, for that grim old dame, to yes, alas, to Monsignor C. himself, for all devoutness had fled. Maybe is Monsignor C. Monsignor Christ? Is that supposed to be what it is? I never yet done such a thing in my life, but now I felt a desire to mock. As for the sermon, I could not hear a word of it. For the jingles in my ear of the skirts of St. Paul had reached, having preached us those 6 Lent lectures, more unctuous than ever he preached. I cannot hear a word of it for the jingles in my ear of keeping time to the most fantastic and irreverent thoughts. It's no use to sit there any longer. I must get out of doors and shake myself free of this hateful mood. I knew the rudeness I was committing, but I still rose and left the church. The spring sun was shining on the Rue Saint Honore as I ran down the church steps. On one corner stood a barrel full of yellow jonquils, pale violets from the Riviera. What the hell are jonquils? Too many words, bro. It's a daffodil or a narcissus. Are they the same? Okay, they're actually not exactly the same. It's like a red flower. It's like a yellow flower with an orange bud. Or, middle part, whatever they call it. I guess I should have used my context clues to figure out that they were flowers. Pale violets from the Riviera, dark Russian violets, and white Roman hyacinths in a golden cloud of mimosa. Isn't it like a drink? The street was full of Sunday pleasure seekers. I swung my cane and laughed with the rest. Someone overtook me and passed me. He never turned, but there was the same deadly malignity in his white profile that there had been in his eyes. I watched him as long as I could see him. His lithe back expressed the same menace. The demon back. And also, what does lithe mean? Thin, supple, and graceful. Oh. Every step that carried him away from me seemed to bear him on some errand connected with my destruction. I was creeping along, my feet almost refusing to move. There began to dawn in me a sense of responsibility for something long forgotten. It began to seem as if I deserved that which he threatened. It reached a long way back, a long, long way back. It had lain dormant all these years, and was there, though. It was there, though, and presently it would rise and confront me. But I would try to escape, and I stumbled as best as I could into the Rue de Rivoli, across the Place de la Concorde and onto the quai. I looked with sick eyes upon the sun, shining through with the white foam of the fountain pouring over the backs of dusky bronze river gods on the faraway arc, a structure of amethyst mist. Oh, that rhymed. On the countless vistas of gray stems and bare branches faintly green. Then I saw him coming down one of the chestnut alleys of the Cours la Reine. I left the riverside, plunged blindly across to the Champs-Élysées. It's not a clothing brand. It turned towards the Arc. The setting sun was sending its rays across the green sward of the Ronde Point. In the full glow he sat on a bench, children and young mothers all about him. He was nothing but a Sunday lounger like the others, like myself. I said the words almost aloud, and all the while I gazed on the malignant hatred of his face. But he was not looking at me. I crept past and dragged my leaden feet up the avenue. I knew that every time I met him brought him nearer to the accomplishment of his purpose and my fate, and still I tried to save myself. The last rays of sunset were pouring through the great arc, and I passed under it and met him face to face. I had left him far down in the Champs-Élysées, and yet he came in with a stream of people who were returning from the Bois de Boulogne. He came so close that he brushed me. His slender frame felt like iron against inside his long black covering. He showed no signs of haste, nor of fatigue, nor of human feeling. His whole being expressed but one thing, the will and the power to work me evil. In anguish I watched him, where he went down the broad, crowded avenue that was flashing with wheels and the trappings of horses and the helmets of the Garde Républicaine. He was soon lost to sight. Then I turned and fled into the bois, and far out beyond it. I know not where I went, but after a long while, as it seemed to me, night had fallen, and I felt myself sitting at a table before a small cafe. I had wandered back into the Bois. It was hours now since I had seen him. Physical fatigue and mental suffering had left me with no more power to think or feel. I was tired, so tired. I longed to hide away in my own den. I was resolved to go home, but that was a long way off. I live in the Court of the Dragon, a narrow passage that leads from the Rue de Rennes to the Rue du Dragon. Rue means road, by the way. It is an impasse, traversable only for foot passengers. Over the entrance on the Rue de Rennes is a balcony surrounded by an iron dragon, Iron Lotus. Rio thinks he's Xiao from Library of Ruina, and then he genuinely uses Pulao and cancels all of the strength buffs I was saving. Within the court, tall old houses rise on either side and close the ends that give on the two streets. Huge gates swung back during the day into the walls of the deep archways. Close this court after midnight, and one must enter then by ringing certain small doors on the side. The sunken pavements collects unsavory pools. Steep stairways pitch down to doors that open on the court. The ground floors are occupied by shops of second-hand dealers and by iron workers. All day long, the place rings with the clink of hammers and the clang of metal bars. Unsavory as it is, below, there's cheerfulness and comfort and hard, honest work above. 5 flights up are the ateliers of architects and painters and the hiding places of middle-aged students like myself who want to live alone. When I first came here to live, I was young and not alone. I had to walk a while before any conveyance appeared, but at last, when I had almost reached the Arc de Triomphe again, an empty cab came along and I took it. From the Arc to the Rue de Rennes is a drive of more than half an hour, especially if one is conveyed by a tired cab horse that's been at the mercy of Sunday fete makers. What is that? That's like a body part, but I thought it was, no, tete is a body part, which is head. So I don't really know what that is. Okay, well, I guess I should look it up then, huh? Sounds like a body part. A lavish celebratory event, so it basically means festival. There had been times before I passed under the dragon's wings to meet my enemy over and over again. I never saw him once, and now refuge was close at hand. Before the wide gateway, a small mob of children were playing. Our concierge and his wife walked about among them with their black poodle, keeping order. Some couples were waltzing on the sidewalk. I returned their greetings and hurried in. All the inhabitants of the court had trooped out into the street. The place was quite deserted, lighted by a few lanterns hung high up, in which the gas burned dimly. My apartment was at the top of a house halfway down, and court, reached by a staircase that descended almost into the street. With only a bit of passageway intervening, I set my foot on the threshold of the open door. The friendly old ruinous stairs rose before me, leading up to rest and shelter. Looking back over my right shoulder, I saw him, 10 paces off. He must have entered the court with me. He was coming straight on, neither slowly nor swiftly, but straight on to me. And now he was looking at me. For the first time I met since our eyes encountered across the church, they met now again, and I knew that the time had come. Retreating backwards down the court, I faced him. I meant to escape by the entrance on the Rue du Dragon. His eyes told me that I never should escape. It seemed ages while we were going, I retreating, he advancing down the court in perfect silence, but at last I felt the shadow of the archway. The next step brought me within it. I had meant to turn here and spring through into the street, but the shadow was not that of an archway, it was that of a vault. The great doors on the Rue du Dragon were closed. I felt this by the blackness which surrounded me. And at the same instant I read it in his face, how his face gleamed in the darkness, drawing swiftly nearer. The deep vaults and the huge closed doors, their cold iron clamps were all on his side. The thing which he had threatened had arrived. It gathered and bore down on me from the fathomless shadows. The point from which it would strike was his infernal eyes. Hopelessly I sat back against the barred doors and defied him. ... There was a scraping of chairs on the stone floor and a rustling as the congregation rose. I could hear the Swiss staff in the south aisle preceding Monsignor C. to the sacristy. Those 5 dots, does that mean there's like a, like a scene transition? Was he like just dreaming it the whole time? The kneeling nuns, roused from their devout abstraction, made their reverence and went away. The fashionable lady, my neighbor, rose with a graceful reserve. As she departed, her glance just flitted over my face in disapproval, half dead, or so it seemed to me, and yet intensely alive to every trifle. I sat among the leisurely moving crowd, then rose too and went toward the door. Had I slept through the sermon? I looked up and saw him passing along the gallery to his place. Only his side I saw. The thin bent arm and its black covering looked like one of those devilish, nameless instruments which lie in the disused torture chamber of medieval castles. But I had escaped him. Those eyes had said I should not. Had I escaped him? That which gave him the power over me came back. That which gave him the power over me came back out of oblivion, where I had hoped to keep it, for I knew him now, death and the awful abode of lost souls. Whither my weakness long ago had sent him, they had changed him for every other eye, but not for mine. I had recognized him almost from the first. I had never doubted what he was come to do, and now I know that while my body sat safe in the cheerful little church, he had been hunting my soul in the court of the dragon. I crept to the door. The organ broke out overhead with a blare. A dazzling light filled the church, blotting the altar from my eyes. The people faded away, the arches, the vaulted roof vanished. I raised my seared eyes to the fathomless gaze, and I saw the black stars hanging in the heavens, and the wet winds from the Lake of Hali chilled my face. Now far away, over leagues of tossing cloud waves, I saw the moon dripping with spray, and beyond the towers of Carcosa rose behind the moon. Death and the awful abode of lost souls, whither my weakness long ago had sent him, had changed him for every other eye but mine. And now I heard his voice, rising, swelling, thundering through the flaring light, and as I fell, the radiance increasing, poured over me in waves of flame. Then I sank into the depths and heard the King in Yellow whispering to my soul, "It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God." Oh shit. The yellow sign. What could that have meant? That's kind of cool. Also, there are a lot of mentions of the moon, like Fear and Hunger, and also there's a King in Yellow reference in Fear and Hunger too. I think. It's the guy who wears all yellow. And then, what else was I thinking? Death is chasing him, and they mention the moon a lot, and you know what the moon means in Fear and Hunger, and especially the guy Perkele. Did you know Perkele means devil in some other language? In French, probably. Alright, ready to break over. The yellow sign. Where? Or is it there? Is that T? Is that W? Is that U? Is that an A? I hear are so many things. Okay, it's probably a T. There are so many things which are impossible to explain. No, I forgot to read the little quote. Let the red dawn surmise what we shall do when this blue starlight dies and all is through. Red versus blue. Why should certain chords in music make me think of the brown and golden tints of autumn foliage? Why should the Mass of Saint Cecile send my thoughts wandering among caverns whose walls blaze with ragged masses of virgin silver? Why was it in the roar and turmoil of Broadway at 6 o'clock that flashed before my eyes the picture of a still Breton forest, where sunlight filtered through spring foliage and Sylvia bent, half curiosity, half tenderly, over a small green lizard, murmuring, "To think this also is a little word of God." When I first saw the watchman, his back was towards me. I looked at him indifferently until he went into the church. I paid no more attention to him than I had any other man who lounged through Washington Square that morning, and when I shut my window and turned back into my studio, I had forgotten him. Late in the afternoon, and the day being warm, I raised the window again and leaned out to get a sniff of air. The man was standing in the courtyard of the church, and I noticed him again with as little interest as I had that morning. I looked across the square to where the fountains was playing, and then, with my mind filled with vague impressions of trees, asphalt drives, and the moving groups of nursemaids and holiday makers, I started to walk back towards the easel. Why do I keep adding words in that aren't there? Walking back to my easel. And I guess he's an artist. As I turned, my listless glance included the man below in the churchyard. His face was toward me now, and with a perfect involuntary movement I bent to see it. At the same time, he raised his head and looked at me. Instantly, I thought of a coffin worm. Whatever it was about the man held me, I did not know, but the impression of a plump white grave worm was intense and nauseating. I kind of want to look at a picture of that. Coffin worm. A haunting descriptive metaphor referring to the blah blah blah. When you look it up, the king in yellow pops up. But what is a coffin worm? Is it a real thing? Or do they mean they're just maggots? Okay, whatever. Must have shown it in my expression, for he turned his puffy face away with a movement that made me think of a disturbed grub in a chestnut. Back to my easel and motioned the model to resume her pose. After working a while, I was satisfied that I was spoiling what I had done as rapidly as possible, and I took up a palette knife and scraped the color out again. Flesh tones were sallow and unhealthy, and I did not understand how I could have painted such a sickly color into a study before that had been glowed with healthy tones. Sallow yellow. I want to look up that word too. Sallow kind of just means like sad. Isn't there like a creepy pasta named like the Sallow Man? Sallow is like an unhealthy color. Okay, no. Nothing. I looked at Tessie. She had not changed, and the clear flush of health dyed her neck and cheeks as I frowned. Is this something I've done? She said. No, I've made a mess of this arm, and for the life of me, I can't see how I came to paint such mud as that into the canvas, I replied. Don't I pose well? She insisted. Of course, perfectly. Then it's not my fault. No, it's my own. I'm very sorry, she said. I told her she could rest while I applied rag and turpentine to the plague spot on my canvas. And she went off to smoke a cigarette and look over the illustrations in the Courrier Français. I did not know whether it was something in the turpentine or a defect in the canvas, but the more I scrubbed, the more that gangrene seemed to spread, or like a beaver to get it out, and yet the disease appeared to creep from limb to limb of the study before me. Alarmed, I strove to arrest it, but now the color of the breast changed, and the whole figure seemed to absorb the infection as a sponge soaks up water. Vigorously, I plied palette knife, turpentine, and scraper, thinking all the time what a seance I should hold with Duval, who had sold me the canvas. But soon I noticed that it was not the canvas that was defective, nor yet the colors of Edward. It must be the turpentine, I thought angrily, or else my eyes have been so blurred and confused by the afternoon light that I can't see straight. I called Tessie to the model. She came and leaned over my chair, blowing rings of smoke into the air. What have you done to it? She exclaimed. Nothing, I growled. It must be this turpentine. What a horrible color it is now, she continued. Do you think my flesh resembles green cheese? No, I don't, I said angrily. Did you ever know me to paint like this before? No, indeed. Well then. It must be the turpentine or something, she admitted. She slipped on a Japanese robe and walked to the window. I scraped and rubbed until I was tired. Finally picked up my brushes and hurled them through the canvas with a forceful expression, the tone alone of which reached Tessie's ears. Nevertheless, she promptly began. That's it. Swear and act silly and ruin your brushes. You've been 3 weeks on that study, and now look. What's the good of ripping the canvas? What creatures artists are. I felt about as much ashamed as I usually did. After such an outbreak, I turned the ruined canvas on the wall. Tessie helped me clean my brushes, then danced away to dress. From the screen, she regaled me with bits of advice concerning whole or partial loss of temper. Until thinking perhaps I had been tormented sufficiently, she came out to implore me to button her waist where she could not reach her on the shoulder. Everything went wrong from the time you came back from the window and talked about that horrid-looking man you saw in the churchyard. Yes, he probably bewitched the picture, I said, yawning. I looked at my watch. It's after 6, I know, said Tessie, adjusting her hat before the mirror. Yes, I replied. I didn't mean to keep you so long. I leaned out the window, but recoiled with disgust. For the young man with the pasty face stood below in the churchyard. Tessie saw my gesture of disapproval and leaned from the window. Is that the man you don't like? She whispered. I nodded. I can't see his face, but he does look fat and soft. Some way or other, she continued, turning to look at me. He reminds me of a dream, an awful dream I once had. Or, she mused, looking down at her shapely shoes. Was it a dream after all? How should I know? I smiled. Tessie smiled in reply. You were in it, she said, so perhaps you might know something about it. Tessie, I protested. Don't you dare flatter me by saying that you dream about me. But I did, she insisted. Shall I tell you about it? Go ahead, I replied, lighting a cigarette. Tessie leaned back on the open windowsill and began very seriously. One night last winter, I was lying in bed, thinking about nothing at all in particular. I'd been posing for you and I was tired out, and yet it seemed impossible for me to sleep. I heard the bells in the city ring 10, 11 at midnight. I must have fallen asleep about midnight because I don't remember hearing the bells after that. It seemed to me that I had scarcely closed my eyes when I had dreamed that something impelled me to go to the window. I rose and, raising the sash, leaned out. 25th Street was deserted as far as I could see. I began to be afraid. Everything outside seemed so black and uncomfortable. Then the sound of wheels in the distance came to my ear, and it seemed to me as though that was what I must wait for. Very slowly the wheels approached, and finally I could make out a vehicle moving across the street. It came nearer and nearer, and when it passed beneath my window, I saw that it was a hearse. Then, as I trembled with fear, the driver turned and looked straight at me. When I awoke, I was standing by the open window, shivering with cold, but the black-plumed hearse and driver were gone. I dreamed this dream again in March, and again awoke beside the open window. Last night the dream came again. You know how it was raining? When I awoke, standing at the open window, my night dress was soaked. But where did I come into the dream? I asked. You were in the coffin, but you were not dead. In the coffin. Yes. How did you know? Could you see me? No, I only knew that you were there. Had you been eating Welsh were-rabbits or lobster salad? I began laughing, but the girl interrupted me with a frightened cry. Hello, what's up? I said as she shrank into the embrasure by the window. The man below in the courtyard, he drove the hearse. Nonsense, I said, but Tessie's eyes were wide with terror. I went to the window and looked out. The man was gone. Come, Tessie, I urged. Don't be foolish. You have posed too long. You were nervous. You are nervous. Do you think I could forget that face? She murmured. 3 times I saw the hearse pass below my window, and every time the driver turned and looked up at me. Oh, his face was so white and soft, it looked dead. It looked as if he had been dead for a long time. I induced the girl to sit down and swallow a glass of marsala. Then I sat down beside her and tried to give her some advice. Look here, Tessie. You go to the country for a week or 2, and you'll have no more dreams about hearses. You pose all day, and when night comes, your nerves are upset. You can't keep this up. Then again, instead of going to bed with your day's work, when your day's work is done, you run off to picnics at Salzer's Park or go to the El Dorado or Coney Island. Isn't that in New York? There's a place in New York. And when you come down here the next morning, you are not saying that out. There is no real hearse. That was a soft shell crab dream. She smiled faintly. What about the man in the churchyard? Oh, well, he's just an ordinary, unhealthy, everyday creature. As true as my name is Tessie Reardon, I swear to you, Mr. Scott, that the man below in the church, the face of the man below in the church, is the face of the man who drove the hearse. What is it? What of it? I said I think it's an honest trade. Then you think I did see the hearse? Oh, I said diplomatically, if you really did, it might not be unlikely that the man below drove it. Tess, there's nothing in that. Tessie rose, unrolled her scented handkerchief, and took a bit of gum from a knot in the hem and placed it in her mouth. Then, drawing on her glove, she offered me a hand with a frank "Good night, Mr. Scott," and walked out. Part 2. The yellow sign. Yeah, yellow is yellow like a sickly color? Is that what you think when you think of yellow? Well, I guess it depends on the shade. But like for me it's like, well, I mean yellow is like a bright color for most people who think it, right? Anyway, hold on. Can I have a break? Few minutes break. Then he's gonna go crazy and die, like just like everybody. Alright, let's get back to reading. The next morning, Thomas the bellboy brought me the Herald and a bit of news. The church next door had been sold. I thanked heaven for it. Not that it being a Catholic, I had any repugnance for the congregation next door, but because of my nerves were shattered by a blatant exhorter whose every word echoed through the aisle of the church as if it had been my own rooms, and who insisted on his R's with a nasal persistence which revolted my every instinct. Then, too, there was a fiend in human shape, an organist. So this is the church like right beside what just happened in the previous chapter, who reeled off some of the grand old hymns with an interpretation of his own, and I longed for the blood of a creature who could play the doxology with an amendment of minor chords, which one hears only in a quartet of very young undergraduates. I believe the minister was a good man. When he bellowed, "And the Lord said unto Moses, the Lord is a man of war, the Lord is in his name. My wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword." I wondered how many centuries of purgatory it would take to atone such a sin. For such a sin, who brought the property? I asked Thomas. Nobody that I know, sir. They do say the gen who owns this here Ambleton Flats was looking at it. He might be a blind in more studios. He might be building more studios. I walked to the window. The young man with the unhealthy face stood by the churchyard gate, and at the mere sight of him, the same overwhelming repugnance took possession of me. "By the way, Thomas," I said, "who is that fellow down there?" Tom sniffed. "That there worm, sir, he's a night watchman of the church, sir. It makes me tired of sitting out there all night on them steps and looking at you insulting like. Gotta punch his head, sir. Beg pardon, sir, but go on, Thomas. One night coming home with Ari, the other English boy, I see him sitting there on the steps. We had Molly and Jen with us, sir, the two girls on the trace service, and he looked so insulting at us that I up and says, 'What you looking at, you fat slug? Beg pardon, sir, but that's how I says, sir.' Then you don't say nothing. I said, 'Come out, I'll punch your pudding head.' And I hops the gate and go. Then I hop in the gate and go in, but you don't say nothing. Only insulting like. Only looks insulting like. Then it's him one. Then it's him one. You hit him, but its head was that cold and mushy that it just made me sick to touch him. What do you do then? Him nothing. And you, Thomas?" The young fellow flushed with embarrassment and smiled uneasily. "Sir Scott, sir, I ain't no coward, and I can't make it out at all why I run. I was in the 5th Lord, sir. Bugler by Tel El Kebir, and was shot by the wells. You want me to say you ran away?" "Yes, sir, I run." "Why?" That's just what I want to know, sir. I grabbed Molly and run, and the rest was as frightened as I, but what were they frightened at? Thomas refused to answer for a while, and my curiosity was aroused by the repulsive young man below. And I pressed him. 3 years' sojourn in America had not only modified Thomas's Cockney dialect, but had given him the American's fear of ridicule. "You won't believe me, Mr. Scott, sir." "Yes, I will." "You will laugh at me, sir?" "Nonsense." He hesitated. "Well, sir, it's God's truth that when I hit him, he grabbed me wrists, and when I twisted soft mushy fist, one of his fingers came off in me, and the other loathing and horror of Thomas's face must have been reflected in my own, for he added, "It's awful, and now when I see him, I just go away. It makes me ill." When Thomas had gone, I went to the window. The man stood beside the church railing with both hands on the gate, but I hastily retreated to my easel again, sickened and horrified, for I saw that middle finger on his right hand was missing. At night, Tessie appeared and vanished behind the screen with a merry "Good morning, Mr. Scott." When she had reappeared and taken her pose upon the model stand, I started a new canvas, much to her delight. She remained silent as long as I was on the drawing, but as soon as the scrape of the charcoal ceased and I took up my fixative, she began to chatter. "Oh, I had such a lovely time last night. We went to Tony Pastor's." "Who are we?" I demanded. "Oh, Maggie, you know. And Mr. White's model, and Pinky McCormick. We call her Pinky. She's got that beautiful red hair you artists like so much, and Lizzie Burke." I sent a shower of spray from the fixative onto the canvas and said, "Well, go on." We saw Kelly and Baby Bane Barnes, the skirt dancer, and all the rest. I made a mash. And you should have gone back on me, Tessie. Then you've gone back on me, Tessie. She laughed and shook her head. He's Lizzie's Burke's brother, Ed. He's a perfect gentleman. I felt constrained to give her some parental advice concerning mashing, which she took with a bright smile. Oh, I can take care of a strange mash. What the heck is a mash? Like mashed potatoes? Or like, did she sleep with a guy? Ed is different. Lizzie is my best friend. Then she related how Ed had come back from the stocking mill in Lowell. Lowell, the Section 1 Leo director. Raging Storm. What is it? Raging Storm care? Okay, also I took a TikTok break for no reason. I mean a Reddit break. And she related how Ed had come back from the stocking mill in Lowell, Massachusetts to find her and Lizzie grown up, and what an accomplished young man he was, and how he thought nothing of squandering half dollar for ice cream and oysters to celebrate his entry as clerk into the woolen department at Macy's. Wow, it was only half a dollar. Half a dollar was spending a lot on a woman back in the day, huh? Half a dollar for ice cream and oysters, but that's a diabolical combination. I saw a TikTok where it's like being in the friend zone is too expensive, so now they just call it a situationship. Or it's like, there's just no point to get into a relationship because the investment is too large. And you could think of that like that's kinda, I don't know. Do I even want to say misogynistic? It's like, yeah, I mean, the prospects on getting a girl this low-key cost too much, bruh. That's why yes, we all buy sex dolls. Yes, me and you. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. And what isn't Macy's like a clothing department store? Before she finished, I began to paint and she resumed the pose, smiling and chattering like a sparrow. By noon, I had the study fairly well rubbed in, and Tessie came to look at it. That's better, she said. I thought so too, and ate my lunch with a satisfied feeling that all was going well. Tessie spread her lunch on a drawing table opposite me, and we drank our claret from the same bottle and lighted our cigarettes from the same match. Wow, romantic. I was very much attached to Tessie. I'd watched her shoot up from a slender but exquisitely formed woman from a frail, awkward child. Okay, maybe not so romantic, maybe grooming, well, whatever. That's just what they did back in the day. She had posed for me during the last 3 years, and among all my models, she was my favorite. It would have troubled me very much indeed if she had become tough or fly, as the phrase goes. I never noticed any deterioration of her manner, and felt at heart that she was all right. She and I never discussed morals at all, and I had no intention of doing so, partly because I had none myself, and partly because I knew she would. I knew she would do what she liked in spite of me. Still, I did hope she would steer clear of complications, because I wished her well. And then also I had a selfish desire to retain the best model I had. I knew that mashing, as she termed it, had no significance with girls like Tessie, and that such things in America did not resemble in the least the same thing in Paris. Oh, they live in Paris. Parisian. That's what that restaurant I was talking about before, Delicious, is. It's a Parisian restaurant. I want to go to some Parisian restaurants. I mean bakeries. So I can eat. No, mashing is like kissing. Or masturbating. I don't really know. It's just what I looked up in the Urban Dictionary. So yeah, I want to go to some like fancy restaurants, but to be honest, I just can't justify the price. They charge like $5 for a fucking croissant. Like, are you nuts, bro? You can get like 10 croissants for like $10. For like $5 even. Oh. At Costco. But yeah. And also, there's this place, what's it called? Loblaws. I already talked about how evil Galen Weston is, you know, well, everyone knows in Canada. He has like a monopoly of the whole fucking like world, so it's kind of fucked up. And then he charges like wild prices. But you know, you just have no choice but to buy them. Well, unless you just like go to fucking. You know, what was I saying? You know, he owns the whatever, and then you just have to go Walmart or whatever. And then anyway, yeah, whatever, you Galen Weston evil, kill Galen Weston or fucking whatever. Anyway, yeah, so I bought it anyway. I basically supported Galen Weston by buying an apple fritter, so if you see me in the street, just shoot me in the head. But it was pretty good. You know, I saw them like stick it. Okay, no, I didn't see them, but I was there like early in the morning, and they were like, you know, there was like a baker coming in and putting stuff in. I'm guessing freshly baked, and that was pretty good. It was pretty good, you know. And then the Baki meme, like me getting a fresh, delicious apple fritter, and then he breaks through the glass. Honestly, I don't even have to describe this shit. I can just open TikTok and fucking see it. Apple fritter, Baki. Yo, bro, I think they got apple fritters. Me when I see a delicious, scrumptious apple fritter. What is Baki even about, bruh? Someone's about to lose their life. Alright, anyway. Have a TikTok break. No, anyway, it was good. Like, it was pretty good, and, I wish I could go to, I wish I could just go around buying shit from bakeries, but I can't. Obviously, and that's me begging for money, so donate me all your money, donate me your life savings so I can waste it all buying shitty fucking food. And like cakes and pastries and stuff. Anyway, why don't we have a little TikTok break? Make things right with the people you cherish the most.
Tell him to back off.
Who are you feeling like?
Bro, I was.
Who are you feeling? Say wallahi, bro. Say wallahi.
What is that, a toy gun you got?
No, Drew.
Dylan, what are you doing with a real gun in the house? We don't own a gun, so...
How Araya versus the King of Curses would go.
You. Soft kitty warm.
What part of tell your husband not to block the sidewalk?
You're in the pool swimming?
You're relaxed.
On screen sharing, you see something you're not supposed to. I think this has happened to me a few times. Some mommy ASMR. It's okay because we all have that on our feed. Okay, anyway. Holy shit.
What's the combination?
Sometimes you gotta stay.
A Neanderthal woman pulls a chunk of mammoth meat out of a pit.
Play the zone.
You feel anything?
Okay.
ordered 20 pizzas from
Who made this shirt?
Sorry, I have to make another withdrawal.
Alright. That sucked. Okay, anyway, where were we? I already fucking forgot. She didn't become chopped. Oh yeah, the Paris thing. Yeah. Hopefully I can go to some more restaurants and maybe I can do like food reviews or some shit. That would be fun. They got some like nice fancy fucking pastries. Mashing had no significance. Same thing as Paris. Yeah, having lived with my eyes open, I also knew that somebody would take Tessie away or someday in one manner or another. And though I professed to myself that marriage was nonsense, I sincerely hoped that in the case there'd be a priest at the end of the vista. I'm a Catholic. When I listen to the High Mass, when I sign myself, I feel that everything, including myself, is more cheerful, and when I confess, it does me good. Water. No water, motherfucker. A man who lives as much alone as I do must confess to somebody. Then again, Sylvia was Catholic, and it was reason enough for me. Well, speaking of Tessie, who's very different, Tessie also was Catholic and much more devout than I, so taking it all in all, I had little fear of my pretty model until she should fall in love. But then I knew that fate alone would decide her future for her, and I prayed inwardly that fate would keep her away from men like me and throw into her path nothing but Ed Burke's and Jimmy McCormick's. Bless her sweet face. Tessie sat blowing rings of smoke up to the ceiling and tinkling the ice in her tumbler. Did you know I also had a dream last night? I observed. Not about that man. She laughed. Exactly. A dream similar to yours, but only much worse. It was foolish and thoughtless of me to say this, but you know how little tact the average painter has. I must have fallen asleep at about 10 o'clock, I continued, and after a while I dreamt that I awoke. So plainly did I hear the midnight bells, the wind in the tree branches, and the whistle of steamers from the bay, that even now I could scarcely believe I was not awake. I seemed to be lying in a box which had a glass cover. Dimly I saw the street lamps as I passed. For I must tell you, Tessie, the box in which I remained appeared to lie in a cushioned wagon which jolted me over a stony pavement. After a while I became impatient and tried to move, but the box was too narrow. My hands were crossed on my breast, so I could not raise them to help myself. I listened and then tried to call. My voice was gone. I could hear the trample of the horses attached to the wagon, and even the breathing of the driver. Then another sound broke upon my ears like the raising of a window sash. I managed to turn my head a little and found I could look not only through the glass cover of my box, but also through the glass panes in the side of the covered vehicle. I saw horses, empty and silent, with neither light nor life about any of them excepting one. In the house, a window was open on the first floor, and a figure all in white stood looking down into the street. It was you. Tessie had turned her face away from me and leaned on the table with her elbow. I could see your face, I resumed, and it seemed to me to be very sorrowful. Then we passed on and turned into a narrow black lane. Presently the horses stopped. I waited and waited, closing my eyes with fear and impatience. But all was silent as the grave. After what seemed to me hours, I began to feel uncomfortable. A sense that somebody was close to me made me unclose my eyes. Then I saw the white face of the hearse driver looking at me through the coffin lid. A sob from Tessie interrupted me. She was trembling like a leaf. I saw I had made an ass of myself and attempted to repair the damage. Why, Tess, I said, I only told you this to show you what influence your story might have on another person's dreams. You don't suppose I really lay in a coffin, do you? What are you trembling for? Don't you see that your dreams and my unreasonable dislike for that inoffensive watchman of the church simply set my brain working as soon as I fell asleep? She laid her head between her arms and sobbed as if her heart would break. What a precious triple donkey I had made of myself. Triple ass. But I was about to break my record. I went over and put my arm about her. Tessie dear, forgive me, I said. I had no business to frighten you with such nonsense. You were too sensible a girl, too good a Catholic to believe in dreams. Her hand tightened on mine and her hand fell back upon my shoulder, but she still trembled and I petted her and comforted her. Come, Tess, open your eyes and smile. Her eyes opened with a slow, languid movement and met mine, but their expression was so queer that I hastened to reassure her again. It was all humbug. Tessie, you surely are not afraid that any harm will come to you because of that. No, she said. But her scarlet lips quivered. Then what's the matter? Are you afraid? Yes, not for myself. For me, then, I demanded gaily. For you, she murmured in a voice almost inaudible. I care for you. At first I started to laugh, but when I understood her, a shock passed through me and I sat like one turned to stone. This was the crowning bit of idiocy I had committed. During the moment which elapsed between her reply and my answer, I had thought of 1,000 replies to an innocent confession. I could pass it by with a laugh. I could misunderstand her and reassure her to my health. I could simply point out that it was impossible that she could love me. But my reply was quicker than my thoughts, and I might think and think now when it was too late, for I kissed her on the mouth. Quadruple idiot. Quadruple ass. No. That evening I took my usual walk in Washington Park, pondering over the occurrences of the day. I was thoroughly committed. There was no back out now, and I stared the future straight in the face. I was no good, not even scrupulous, but I had no intention of deceiving either myself or Tessie. The one passion of my life lay buried in the sunlit forests of Brittany. Was it buried forever? Hope cried no. For 3 years I'd been listening to the voice of hope, and for 3 years I'd waited on a footstep on my threshold. Had Sylvia forgotten? No, cried Hope. Oh, Sylvia. I hope. Oh, it's not good. That is true, but still I was not exactly a comic opera villain. I had an easygoing, reckless life, taking what invited me a pleasure, deploring, sometimes bitterly regretting consequence. And one thing alone, however, one thing alone except my painting was I serious. And there's something that lay hidden, if not lost, in the Breton forests. It was too late now for me to regret what had occurred that day. Whether it had been pity, a sudden tenderness for sorrow, or the more brutal instincts of gratified vanity, it was the same now. Unless actually, hold on, I gotta look at something. But yeah, I don't know, they fell in love with her. Or he fell in love with her, which was kind of ridiculous, I guess. Okay, well, it's not that ridiculous. I don't know, I don't really care that much. It's like whatever, and I'm sure this is about to go down. It's about to, horrifically fuck him up. But it's fine. Okay, whatever. I think I saw what I wanted. I got what I wanted. At least that's what I think. Okay, yeah, I got what I wanted. Oh, but simply I've forgotten. It's all the same now, and unless I wish to bruise an innocent heart, my path lay marked before me. The fire and strength, the depth of passion, of a love I'd never even suspected, with all my imagined experience in the world, left me no alternative but to respond or send her away, whether because I am so cowardly about giving pain to others, or whether it was that I have little of the gloomy Puritan in me, I did not know, but I shrank from the disclaiming responsibility of the thoughtless kiss, and in fact no time to do so before the gates of her heart opened and the flood poured forth. Others who habitually do their duty and find a sullen satisfaction in making themselves and everyone else unhappy might have withstood it, but I did not. I dared not. After the storm had abated, I did tell her she might better have loved Ed Burke and worn a plain gold ring, but she would not hear of it. I thought perhaps that she had decided to loved somebody she could not marry. It had better be me. I at least could treat her with an intelligent affection, and whenever she became tired of her infatuation, she could go none the point for it, for I decided on that point, although I knew how hard it would be. I remembered the usual termination of platonic liaisons and thought how disgusted I had been whenever I heard of one. I knew I was undertaking a great deal for so unscrupulous a man as I was, and I dreaded the future, but never for one moment did I doubt that she was safe with me. Had it been anybody but Tessie, I should not have bothered my head about scruples, for it did not occur to me to sacrifice Tessie as I would have sacrificed a woman of the world. I looked the future squarely in the face and saw the several probable endings to this affair. She would either tire of the whole thing or become so unhappy that I should either to marry her or go away. If I married her, we would be unhappy. I with a wife unsuited to me, and she with a husband unsuited to any woman. For my past life could scarcely entitle me to marry. If I went away, she might either fall ill, or she might recklessly or deliberately do something foolish. On the other hand, if she tired of me, then her whole life would be before her with beautiful vistas of Eddie Burke. Eddie Burke's and Marriage Wings and Twins and Harlem Flats and heaven knows what. Alright, also hold on. Alright, whatever. As I strolled along through the trees by the Washington Arch, I decided that she should find a substantial friend in me anyway in the future. could take care of itself. Then when I went into the house, I put on my evening dress, where the little faintly perfumed note on my dresser said, "Have a cab at the stage door at 11," and the note was signed Edith Carmichael, Metropolitan Theater. I took supper that night, or rather we took supper, Miss Carmichael and I, at Solari's, and the dawn was just beginning to gild the cross on the memorial church. It was a lot of shit stain. Ew. As I entered Washington Square after leaving Edith at the Brunswick, there was not a soul in the park as I passed among the trees and took the walk which leads from the Garibaldi statue to the Hamilton apartment house. But as I passed the churchyard, I saw a figure sitting on the stone steps. In spite of myself, a chill crept up over me at the sight of the white, puffy face, and I hastened to pass. He said something that might have been addressed to me, or merely might have been a mutter to himself. But a sudden furious anger flamed up within me that such a creature should address me. For an instant I felt like wheeling about and smashing my stick on his head, but I walked on, and entering the Hamilton, went to my apartment. What if in this chapter there's nothing wrong and the guy's just ugly? The guy's just ugly and everyone hates him for being ugly. Poor guy. Well, that's obviously not true. He's just the devil. Just the devil. But hold on. A new login event is coming. No, they lied to me.
You remember Leroy Jenkins? Yeah, right. We mean right. You know Leroy Jenkins? What about it? Do that. Go, you can't.
What pages at? How many pages have I read? Like 50? Honestly, I want to get to like page 150 and then call it, but like I don't want there to be too many parts, but I guess who really cares about that? But then after, like, what am I gonna do? Well, I mean, obviously I'm gonna play a game after. But like, what game? I mean, Hades again, I guess. I really want to beat Hades, but I'm pretty sure that if you kill Hades, like, it's not the end of the game, because there's like so much other shit left to do. So it's probably not good. So I guess I gotta keep reading, like, I don't know, 30 more pages, like, what is it? So I read 50 pages in like an hour. It's like, if I read up to page like 150, it's gonna be like 2 hours, which is, you know, usually how long I run a video for.
Tourists strolling through the park were horrified to discover a group of strange men standing among them. These men had their arms stretched out, just like scarecrows. At first, everyone assumed it was something.
Listen up, Toronto. Bloor Street is shutting down this month for a major city street festival, and you know what? It's no one tells. I just got. Give it away.
You're ever trying to steal someone's breath?
All right. All right. Let's get back. Or maybe I can just wrap this chapter up. He said something that might have been addressed to me, blah, blah, blah. I was thinking about beating him over the head. For some time, I tossed about the bed trying to get the sound of his voice out of my ears, but could not. It filled my head, that muttering sound, like thick, oily smoke from a fat, rending vat, or an odor of noisome decay. As I lay and I tossed about, the voice in my ear seemed more distinct, and I began to understand the words he had muttered. They came to me slowly as if I had forgotten them, and at last I could make some sense out of the sounds. It was this. Have you found the yellow sign? Have you found the yellow sign? Have you found the yellow sign? I was furious. What did he mean by that? Then with a curse upon him and his, I rolled over and went to sleep, but when I awoke later, I looked pale and haggard, for I had dreamed the dream of the night before, and it troubled me more than I cared to think. I dressed and went down into my studio. Tessie sat by the window, but as I came in, she rose and put both arms around my neck for an innocent kiss. She looked so sweet and dainty that I kissed her again and sat down before the easel. Hello, where's the study I began yesterday? Tessie looked conscious but did not answer. I began to hunt among the pile of canvases, saying, "Hurry up, Tess, and get ready. You must take advantage of the morning light." When I at last gave up the search among the other canvases and turned to look around the room for the missing study, I noticed Tessie standing by the screen with her clothes still on. "Hey, what's the matter?" I asked. "Don't you feel well?" "Yes." "Then hurry. Do you want me to pose as I have always posed?" Then I understood. Here comes a new complication. I had lost, of course, the best nude model I'd ever seen. I looked at Tessie. Her face was scarlet. Alas, alas. We had eaten of the tree of knowledge. We had eaten of the tree of knowledge and eaten in native innocence or dreams of the past. I mean for her. I suppose she noticed disappointment on my face, for she said, "I will pose if you wish. The study is behind the screen here where I put it." "No," I said, "we will begin something new." I went out of my wardrobe and picked out a Moorish costume, which was fairly blazed with tinsel. It was a genuine costume, and Tessie retired to the screen with it, enchanted. When she came forth again, I was astonished. Her long black hair was bound upon above her forehead with a circlet of turquoises, and the ends curled about in her glittering girdle. Her feet were encased in the embroidered pointed slippers, and the skirt of her costume, curiously wrought with arabesques in silver, fell to her ankle. The deep metallic blue vest embroidered with silver and short arabesque jacket, spangly and sewn with turquoises, became her wonderfully. She came up to me and held up her face smiling. I slipped my hand into my pocket and, drawing out a gold chain with a cross attached, dropped it over her head. It's yours, Tessie. Mine, she faltered. Yours. Now go and pose. Then, with a radiant smile, she ran behind the screen and presently reappeared with a little box which was written my name. I'd intended to give it to you when I went home tonight, she said, but I can't wait now. Bro gave her a nectar, and then she got one heart and gave her a gift in return. Gave him a gift in return. I opened the box. On the pink cotton inside lay a clasp of black onyx, on which inlaid a curious symbol or letter in gold. It was neither Arabic nor Chinese, nor, as I found afterward, that it belongs to any human script. It's all I had to give you for a keepsake, she said timidly. I was annoyed, but I told her how much I should prize and promised to wear it always. She fastened it on my coat beneath the lapel. How foolish, Tess, to go and buy me such a beautiful thing as this. I did not buy it, she laughed. Where'd you get it? Then she told me how she had found it one day while coming from the aquarium in the Battery, how she'd advertised and watched the paper. But I last gave up on all hopes of finding the owner. That was the last winter, the very day I had the first horror dream about the hearse. I remembered my dream of the previous night but said nothing, and presently my charcoal was flying over the new canvas and Tessie stood motionless on the painting stand, on the model stand. Well, that's not ominous at all, and it wasn't in any human letters. Oh, that's really great. Also, can I have a TikTok break? A Reddit break. And I'm thirsty, so I have to go get some water. So, just give me a second. I mean, I'm taking a lot of breaks, but like, it's my fucking stream, so who cares? Here, let me grab some water. Alright, I came back. Just drink some tap water. Alright, let's get back to work. The day following was a disastrous one for me. While moving to a framed canvas from one easel to another, my foot slipped on the polished floor and I fell heavily on both wrists. They were so badly sprained that it was useless to attempt to hold a brush, and I was obliged to wander about the studio, glaring at unfinished drawings and sketches until despair seized me and I sat down to smoke and twiddle my thumbs with rage. The wind blew against the windows and rattled onto the roof of the church, driving me into a nervous fit with its interminable partner. Tessie sat sewing by the window, and every now and then she raised her head and looked at me with such innocent compassion that I began to feel ashamed of my irritation and looked about for something to occupy me. I'd read all the papers and all the books in the library, but for the sake of something to do, I went to the bookcase and shoved them open with my elbow. I knew every volume by its color and examined them all, passing slowly around the library and whistling to keep up my spirits. I was turning to go into the dining room when my eye fell upon a book bound in serpent skin standing at a corner of the top shelf of the last bookcase. I did not remember it from the floor, and from the floor I could not decipher the pale lettering of the back, so I went to the smoking room and called Tessie. She came in from the studio and climbed up to reach the book. "What is it?" I asked. "The King in Yellow." I was dumbfounded. Who had placed it there? How came it in my rooms? I had long ago decided I should never open that book, and nothing could have persuaded me to buy it, fearful lest curiosity might tempt me to open it. I'd never even looked at it in bookstores. If I ever had any curiosity to read it. The awful tragedy of the young Castigny, of whom I knew, prevented me from exploring its wicked pages, as someone from the previous chapter. I'd always refused to listen to any description of it, and indeed nobody ever ventured to discuss the second part out loud. So I had absolutely no knowledge of what those leaves might reveal. I stared at the poisonous mottled binding as I would a snake. "Don't touch it, Tessie," I said. "Calm down." Of course, my admonition was enough to arouse her curiosity, and before I could prevent it, she took the book and, laughing, danced off to the studio. With it, I called to her, but she slipped away with a tormenting smile at my helpless hands, and I followed her with some impatience. "Tessie," I cried, entering the library, "listen, I'm serious. Put that book away. I do not wish you to open it." The library was empty. I went into both drawing rooms, then returned, then into the bedroom, laundry, kitchen, finally returned to the library and began a systematic search. She had hidden herself so well. That was half an hour when I discovered her crouching white and silent by the latticed window in the storeroom above. At the first glance, I saw that she had been punished for her foolishness. The King in Yellow lay at her feet, but the book was open at the second part. I looked at Tessie and saw it was too late. She had opened The King in Yellow. I took her by the hand and led her into the studio. She seemed dazed, and when I told her to lie down on the sofa, she obeyed me without a word. After a while, she closed her eyes and her breathing became regular and deep. But I could not determine whether or not she slept. For a long while, I sat silently beside her, but she neither stirred nor spoke. And at last I rose and entered the unused storeroom, took the book in my least injured hand. It seemed as heavy as lead, but I carried it into the studio again, and sitting down on the rug beside the sofa, opened it and read it through from beginning to end. "Are you crazy, bro? What the hell? Why the hell would you do that?" Guess he wanted to be insane with his girlfriend. When, faint with the excess of my emotions, I dropped the volume and leaned warily back and leaned across the sofa. Tessie opened her eyes and looked at me. Dot 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 dot. Dip 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 dip. We had been speaking for some time in a dull, monotonous strain before I realized what we were discussing, the King in Yellow. Oh, the sin of writing such words, words which are clear as crystal, limpid and musical as bubbling springs. Words which sparkle and glow like the poisoned diamonds of the Medicis. Medicis. Oh, the wickedness and hopeless damnation of a soul who could fantasize and paralyze human creatures with such words. Words understood by the ignorant and wise alike. Words which are more precious than jewels, more soothing than music, more awful than death. We talked on, unminding of the gathering shadows, and she was begging me to throw away the clasp of the black onyx quietly inlaid with what we now knew to be the yellow sign. I never shall know why I refused, but even at this hour, here in my bedroom as I write this confession, I should be glad to know what prevented it, what it was that prevented me from tearing the yellow sign from my breast and casting it into the fire. I am sure I wished to do so, and yet Tessie pleaded with me in vain. Night fell and the hours dragged on, but still we murmured to each other of the king and the pallid mask. Then the midnight sounded from the misty spires in the fog-wrapped city. We spoke of Hastur and Casilda, while outside the fog rolled across against the blank window panes, as the cloud waves roll and break on the shores of Hali. The house was very silent now, and not a sound came up from the misty streets. Tessie lay among the cushions, her face a gray blot in the gloom. Her hands were clasped in mine, and I knew that she knew and read my thoughts as I read hers, for we understood the mystery of the Hyades and the phantom of truth slayed. Then, as we answered each other, silently, thought on thought, the shadows stirred in the gloom about us, and far in the distant streets we heard a sound. Nearer and nearer it came, the dull crunching of wheels, nearer and yet nearer, and now outside the door it ceased, and I dragged myself to the window and saw a black-plumed hearse. The gate below opened and shut, and I crept shaking to my doors and bolted it. But I knew no bolts, no locks could keep that creature out who was coming for the yellow sign. And now I heard him moving very softly along the halls. Now he was at the door, and the bolts rotted at his touch. Now he had entered, with eyes starting from my head. I peered into the darkness, but when he came into the room I did not see him. It was only when I felt him envelop me in his cold, soft grasp that I cried out and struggled with deadly fury, but my hands were useless, and he tore the onyx clasp from my coat and struck me full in the face. Then, as I fell, I heard Tessie's soft cry, and her spirit fled, and even while falling, I longed to follow her, for I knew that the king in yellow had opened his tattered mantle, and there was only God to cry to now. I could tell more, but I cannot see what help it will be to the world. As for me, I am past human help or hope. As I lie here, writhing, careless even whether or not I die before I finish, I can see the doctors gathering up his powders and phials with a vague gesture to the good priest beside me, which I understand. They will be very curious to know the tragedy. They of the outside world will write books and print millions of newspapers, but I shall write no more. And the Father Confessor will seal my last words with the seal of sanctity when his holy office is done. They of the outside world may send their creatures into wrecked homes and death-smitten firesides, and their newspapers will batten on the blood and tears, but with me, their spies must halt before the confessional. They know that Tessie is dead and that I am dying. They know how the people in the house, aroused by an infernal scream, rushed into my room and found one living and two dead, but they do not know what I shall tell them now. They do not know that the doctor said as he pointed to a horrible decomposed heap on the floor, the livid corpse of the watchman from the church. I have no theory, no explanation. That man must have been dead for months. I think I am dying. I wish the priest would. And no more was said. The demoiselle dis, mais je crois que je suis descendu un puits ténébreux unquel de soit Heraclitus Estra Verity Cache. I don't know what that means. For there be three things that are too wonderful for me, ye four, which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. Okay, anyway. I think I'm gonna call it here. That's basically it. And then now we're gonna play Hades after. But anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and all that for more. And tell me what you think about the book. I think it's pretty good. I mean, it's okay. It's just a bunch of people going fucking crazy and dying, which is like, I guess that's what I signed up for. Okay, bye-bye.